Productions.
We are being hypnotized by people like this. Newsreaders, politicians, teachers, lecturers. We are in a country and in a world that is being run by unbelievably sick people. The chasm between what we're told is going on and what is really going on is absolutely enormous.
Oh yeah, dude. There's some Nephilim shit.
It's like we all know what's going down, but no one's saying shit what happened to the home of the brave. These motherfuckers, they controlling us now, and no one's talking about how they made us fight and be slaves. And everybody's just walking around, heading the clouds and won't awaken to a dead in the grave. By then it's too late, we need to be ready to raise up. Welcome to the end of days.
Everybody is slaves, only some are aware that the government releasing poison in the air.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Nephilim Death Squad. I am David Lee Corbo, a.k.a. The Raven. That is TOPLOBSTA, the father of disinformation. Before we get into today's guest, I would just like to remind everybody that this episode is going to stream in its entirety. However, if you were still looking for a good way to support Nephilim Death Squad, then consider going on over to patreon.com/Nephilim Death Squad, signing up for whatever tier you'd like, and enjoying ad-free viewing experiences, hanging out in the chat during live shows, and also gaining early access to the episodes before the general public does. You could even do it for free for 7 days, and you can try to get out before the billing cycle kicks in, but I bet you're gonna want to stay at patreon.com/Nephilim Death Squad. Guys, it is Friday, and Fridays are for the Lord, and so we are back once again with Ed Mabrie and the continuation of our Book of Genesis discussion. This is episode 6, but before we get into all of that, Ed, where can people find your work?
Yeah, thanks, guys, and sorry I wasn't on last week. I had to go on a date with my wife, so
oh, that's nice.
Got to keep that going.
Wonderful.
We went up to wine country. We're actually we live in like the county like adjacent to Napa, so we used to do it all the time before we had kids, and so we did that. Yeah. So appreciate you.
You look forward to the kids getting older, and then you can kind of redo that again, right?
You gotta be careful, Ed. You might have more kids coming.
You might start over. You might start over, dude.
Let's put it this way: I am surgically incapable of having any more children.
There you go. No such thing as starting over.
No, if she gets pregnant now, we're either she's cheating on me, or we're gonna have to name it Jesus because it was immaculate.
There you go. Either it's Jesus or we're fist fighting. Where can people find you, Ed?
So my legacy website is faithbyreason.net. That's where you will find everything I've been doing for the last decade plus, all my blogs and podcasts and videos. And if you like the stuff, I suggest you start reading it now, because I'm going to start moving things around, and there may not be as much available there because I'm moving to some other platforms. Speaking of which, the place where I am really driving people that I'd love for you to go is to my Patreon, which is patreon.com/faithbyreason. And if you become a Patreon, the 2 levels, at the first level, you get bonus episodes. You get to get my stuff right before it's released anyplace else. The next episode of the Genesis series, I was hoping to have it up this week, but I've been really busy with some other stuff I'll talk about in a second. So I'll have it edited up hopefully today or over the weekend. And that'll be the next part of the Genesis series. So you get that. You also have my weekly Q&As that you see there. And if you level up and go to the blue tier level, then in addition to everything else, you also get to be part of the monthly Bible study, the Jehovah's Story Book Club, as we call it, where we go through the entire Bible in 1 year with these once a month sessions, and we look at the Bible from the supernatural, the spiritual point of view. And it's where you should go, because that's where 80% of the Bible is the spiritual realm. And that's why most people have trouble understanding it and understanding who God is and his character and his will, because we look at it as if the Bible's our story. It's not. It's Jehovah's story, and what's going on in the background, or what we consider the background in the spiritual realm. That's where everything is happening. And if you understand that, then you will really know what's going on. And in addition, and one of the reasons why I'm late putting stuff up is because I am working on 2 books right now. One which I plan to release probably next week, and we can maybe talk about it on next week's show. This will be a book I've done. I'm finishing up on the false apocalypse and reimagining Revelation chapter 6. And then my next book, which I plan to have completed and up on my Patreon and Amazon and all the other Apple books and all that kind of stuff, will also be my book on the Little Season. I'm doing a book on Little Season that I want to release in May. And the reason, and by the way, if those of you who are Little Season fans, it is your fault that I have this book up, because every time I talk about the Little Season, I've been on a ton of podcasts. We talked about it here. I have my video on it. I always get pushback from the Little Season people. And the one thing they always say, well, Ed, you didn't do enough research. Well, you shouldn't have asked me to do that, because I have done more research, and it does not help your side. The more research I do, the worse the Little Season becomes, the more evidence that we're not in it.
Well, so, Ed, this is how, if I was you, that would be the first thing I do, because our friend Paul Stobbs of Understanding Conspiracy, he's one of the guys that spearheaded this theory, or you don't even like to call it a theory, but the Little Season idea. He was mentioned on Joe Rogan. Eddie Bravo was on Joe Rogan, and he was like, there's this guy, Understanding Conspiracy. You got to see him. He's talking about the Little Season. And Joe's like, whoa, that's crazy, bro. So it's like, this has hit the mainstream. It's float there. They our friend Clint Russell has interviewed him as well. He's like, this is crazy. And I gave him the pushback of what I think it might be, but it's in the narrative. So now
the race is on.
Yeah, the race is on. Now is the time to get out there and be like, actually, here's the book. If you do feel so inclined. But I have an idea for your cover, Ed.
Okay.
The cover of your book. Bam. Look at that. Incredible.
That's so cool. I like how it nailed his background too. That's crazy.
Oh yeah.
That's awesome.
Dude, AI is getting real weird.
Yeah.
Look, before we go on, I just want to bring to your attention, Ed, that one of our favorite people in the chat, Z-Man is awesome, caught wind of the fact that you have some issues when it comes to royalties and music, right? Like music that's not going to get you copyright struck. Well, it seems that Z-Man has whipped you up some music, and he's looking for a place to send it to you. Would you have a someplace they could reach out to if people want to send you things?
Yeah, I can. Well, can we get? Do you mind if I give it to him after the show? Because
that's fine. That's fine. Maybe best to not blast it out. If you give it to me, I'll give it to him. He's a good guy. He's one of our longtime supporters.
Oh no, yeah. If you guys trust him, I trust him. I just don't want to blast it out to everyone, because this. I'm actually, you know what? I have a Faith by Reason email. I can give that out. And hold on, it is actually I'll give it to you. I just created it because I needed it for something else that I'm doing. Okay, perfect. So I'll give it to you, Raven, afterwards. I'll send it to you. Let me make a note of that too.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah, just our community is filled with a lot of really cool people who really want to help, and so I thought that was
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, because that copyright thing, could be a huge pain in the butt.
Very annoying.
Music.
Very annoying.
One of these days, Vinny Paz is going to show up to our doors and shoot us, because I'm sure we owe him like a tremendous amount of money for our intro.
Well, the irony is that the piece that I keep getting tagged for by YouTube, I paid for it. I mean,
dude, that happens a lot, and I don't know what to do about that. Actually, like
you've got to like, there's a whole claim that you have to do it. You have to deny it, and then you have to claim it before you put the video up. But it's really ridiculous, because a lot of the stuff is from programs that you pay for, and it comes royalty free. But YouTube doesn't recognize that, because they don't know where you got it from. So it's an entire thing. I know.
But
so anyway, to wrap it up, so I've got the False Apocalypse book. Next week it should be out, and then I guess I have my finger on the pulse of things. So early May is when I want to have my Little Season book ready to go, and hopefully that, because I've already got people lined up who want to have me on a book tour, but on their podcast, because it is blowing up. Everyone's talking about it, and there aren't many people like myself who have a dispute. A formal dispute to it. So yeah, I'm all about it.
Let me tell you, man, I think at least once or twice a week, I'm still getting new comments on our episode of the Debunking the Little Season. People are so mad.
You know what's funny about those people?
And I know why they're mad. That's how I end the book, with talking about, because I don't want to I'm not going to get too deep into it, but I'll just put it this way. I understand the psychology of the people who are accepting the Little Season. And once I understood that, actually God, because I would get into battles with people about it, and I would always feel uncomfortable afterwards. And God revealed something to me, and He said, "Look, I need you to look at it from their point of view." And once
what are you looking at? Are we going to bring up the comments of everybody really mad at
us? No, I'm just looking at your yellow hair. Jesus.
Oh
dude.
My God, what an atrocious human being.
Yeah, 2,000 views is one of the higher videos on YouTube that we have that's been watched. So people
mine as well. Unfortunately, it got demonetized. So thanks for that, YouTube.
Paz, that's probably why.
Anyway,
well,
let's move on.
It'll be interesting to see how that develops in the future. But today we are here, episode 6, and I have a question, Ed. Why have we named this episode "The Poetry of Creation"?
Yeah, because the first chapter of Genesis, specifically from, I guess, verse 3 on, is not narrative. It is poetry.
Hmm.
And if in some of your Bibles, depending on the translation you have, Genesis chapter 1 is in stanzas. Just like in the book of Psalms, all the Psalms are in stanzas of 3-4 lines, or even more, indented, just like any other poem. That's because the translators understood that this was Hebrew poetry. But just chapter 1, chapter 2 is different. And it's really important to understand how Hebrew poetry works. And if you understand that, then it will clear up some of the confusion that people have about chapter 1 and chapter 2, because many people see them as two different creation narratives, and they're not. Because in Hebrew poetry, remember, this was not written to 21st century English-speaking Americans. This book was written to ancient Israelites, and it had who spoke Hebrew, and they had a certain culture and their linguistics. And the way things would work in Hebrew poetry is there will be a poem, or more accurately, a song, because Hebrew poetry is meant to be sung. If you ever go to any type of a synagogue, Orthodox Jewish synagogue, and they will read from the Psalms, but they will be chanting it. They will be singing the Psalms. They're meant to be sung. So you could technically say that God sung this replenishment, and we'll talk about what that means in a second, into existence. But poetry is, just like any poetry, is a big picture overview. It uses a few words to give like tons of information and ideas and you have to use inferences, just like with any song. In the video that I did on the poetry of creation, that's actually, it should be on YouTube. I think I dropped it on YouTube today. It's been on my Patreon for a couple weeks. I talk about that, and I give lyrics to a love song, and I talk about how I give 4 lines of a love song that basically talks about years of a couple's, their interaction, because you have to infer and read things into it based on those lyrics. And it's the same thing with the creation narrative, and because people complain about it and say, well, God created the universe in just this one chapter. All these things are going on, mountains and trees and stars and planets and all this kind of stuff. So they don't take it seriously, because they don't see that this is a poem. And just like any poem, it packs a ton of information into a few words. But the unique thing about Hebrew poetry is that it is always either preceded or followed by exposition that extrapolates on the poetry. And so you see that example in the Song of Moses, for example, at the end of Deuteronomy. And this is preceded by God giving all of his rules to Israel about the blessings and curses. If you do these certain things, you'll be blessed, and God gives details about the blessings. And if you don't obey him, you'll be cursed, and here are all the curses. And then after that, Moses gives an overview of that in the form of a song. And that song basically says, yeah, you're going to be blessed or cursed. You guys are going to screw this up. You're going to be cursed, but hold on as long as you can. But you guys are idiots. You're going to screw this up. But and he said that's his big picture overview. And you have in the book of Matthew, you have the Song of Mary, after she's visited by the angel Gabriel, who tells her that she's going to be the vessel through which Jesus comes into the earth. And she sings a song where she is basically giving this big picture overview of this, how women have been wanting. It was like the desire of every Israelite woman to be the mother of the Messiah, and she praises God for it, so forth and so on. So the point is, in this case, Genesis chapter 1 is a song, and it's followed by Genesis chapter 2, which again in Hebrew poetry it's exposition. It gives more details. And if you don't understand this, then you're going to fall into the category of believing that there were 2 creations, and that there were 2 creations of humanity. Because at the end of the first of the song, it says, and God created man, he male and female, in the image of God he made them, male and female he created them. And then in the next chapter, it talks about how he made Adam from the dust of the earth, and how he made Eve from her. And then so people who don't understand this will say, well, okay, God made a bunch of humans in chapter 1 who existed for X number of years, and then he made Adam and Eve separately. No, that's not how Hebrew poetry works. It was an overview. He's saying, I made mountains, I made trees, I made sea animals, I made land animals, and I made humanity. Okay, chapter 2. Here's exactly how I made humanity. First man, first woman. So, and I talk about that a little bit in my next video, and I'm going to do a bonus episode of my Patreon that I'm calling The Mysteries of Creation, where I'm going to go into detail on some of these things, some of the stuff that are my theories, things like, what I think the firmament is, the age of the earth, and, the message in the stars, and all that, a bunch of those sorts of things that aren't part of the verse by verse study. But my point is, but I'm also going to talk about the theories of these pre-Adamic civilizations of humanity. And I understand why people want to, why they promote this idea, because they're trying to explain certain things that seem mysterious in the Bible, like, where did Cain get his wife? Or, why are there so many different racial groups and so forth and so on. But believing that there's a pre-Adamic civilization actually creates more problems than it solves, because some of the questions that come up with is, okay, if God made a bunch of humans before he made Adam and Eve, then were those humans sinless? Because the Bible says in the book of Romans, among other places, that sin came into the world through Adam. So what about these other people? Did they sin too? And if so, then how could sin have come through Adam if they sinned first? If they didn't sin, then why do they have to pay for the sins of Adam? If they were just perfect and not eating of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, why are they suffering for what Adam did? That doesn't make sense.
Well, that's a fascinating point.
There's a lot of stuff I'll get into.
It presents even a riskier question, which would be, are they people? Because to sin would mean, that's a dangerous one. To sin would mean to miss the mark, and that would imply that there's a mark for you to hit. And the mark would be to be like God, your creator, or that opens up a weird bag of worms, which I don't know. It's interesting, but I don't know where you put it.
What Ed just said kind of like puts an arrow in the knee of that, because there are those, like we found that book top. Remember, it was like pre-Adamite civilizations or the pre-Adamites or something like that. And basically what it showed you was it showed you abos and like mongoloids and things like that. And like, it's kind of saying that anybody, if kind of what it was alluding to is like anybody that's not the white man was like, who, but then it's like, okay, well, if that's what you believe, then how did sin not enter the world until Adam? And then, so if you're championing, some Aryan race or some shit like that, then you have to answer the question of why was this Aryan race created? And then sin was introduced to the world through them.
Also, what the hell are abos? I mean, these are great questions.
That's a great question. I don't think that we're going to get, I don't know if we'll ever get an answer for that, but I mean,
like you guys were saying, like one of the big issues with that is the whole racial superiority thing. And
yes,
not everyone, but a lot of people who hold to those theories of one race is better than the other. And if they have any kind of biblical bent, they always go back to this. Well, God made other races. Because here's the thing that's funny about racists. Every racist everyone who believes in the theory of racial superiority just always happens to be a member of the superior race.
Oh yeah. You're very rarely.
Not me. I'm a huge racist, and I think Puerto Ricans are trash. I can actually prove it mathematically. You guys bear with me.
you are the exception, because I mean, almost you never hear a white racist say, you know what? Yeah, there's a superior race out there, and it's the Asians. No.
Yeah.
But if you're a white racist, you think whites are superior. If you're a black racist, you think blacks are superior, or whatever. So obviously, clearly, you're not being objective. You're just saying, and by sheer luck, I just happen to be a member of the race. And so, I mean, again, and this, it's not just a white thing. I mean, they're
no, you get the other side. You get like the Yakubian
narrative. Original people that, the Adam and Eve were black, and the other people, the original, the first humans were white, but the special ones are Adam and Eve, and they're dark, whatever. But the point is, it creates more problems than it solves because of that. Because it honestly doesn't make any sense. Because if sin came into the world through Adam, then God would be unjust to put that on everyone else. And if everyone else didn't sin, then they should be immortal.
Right.
So yes, go ahead.
So where do we put this stuff then? Like, because that is a timeline that is quite confusing for me, right? Adam kicked out of the garden, and then something. Cain and Abel, that happens. He gets cast out. Something. He ends up in a town with a bunch of people, and he was scared that they'll kill him. So what's going on?
Mark so that he can be protected from people that are going to murder him.
Yeah, I'm gonna. I'll do a bonus episode. We're just riffing here, so I'll give more details. But yeah, because people say that. Well, who was Cain talking about? Well, keep in mind that human beings were not the only intelligent life that existed. There were the Elohim. I believe that's what he was talking about. He goes. So let me go back to him going to a city. It didn't say he went to a city and there were people there. It says that he built a city. And it didn't say that he started building it immediately. What it does say is that he started having descendants, and they started having descendants. And remember, these people lived hundreds of years. They lived to be 600, 700, 800 years. And if you think that, and I don't know what their fertility rate was, but if you figure that maybe the women for a third of their life, they were fertile, that would be like what, 200-300 years.
Yeah.
Where they could have babies and their babies could have babies. And if you do the math, there was basically, but Adam lived for 930 years. And it says he had sons and daughters. He had tons of them, in which they would have had more and more and more. And so from the time that Adam sinned to the time of the Nephilim, that's about 2,000 years. And if you looked at the idea of a woman being fertile for 300 of those years, and every woman having an average of just three kids every 100 years, just three every 100 years for those 300 years.
And that's conservative, right?
Over
like three.
Yeah, I'm being conservative. That could easily be 1 billion people on Earth by the time of the Nephilim. 3 billion, just starting with that base pair of Adam and Eve. And we know the three sons they had were Cain, Abel. Obviously Abel was killed, and then Seth. And it also said they have daughters. Didn't say how many daughters they had. So if you just, obviously they had to, Cain had to, where did Cain get his wife? Probably his sister, or could have been his niece, because when Cain killed Abel, they were in their 70s or 80s at this time, if you use the timeline. By this time, Abel could have married one of his sisters and had a daughter, and she could have been of marrying age. So Cain either married his sister or he could have married his niece.
It's crazy too, because when you start thinking about like having that many kids, these people would not have even known some of those kids. You know what I mean? Like there's just simply like Adam, if he lives 900 and some odd years, certainly by the time he's 700, he has forgotten many of the children's names that he's had. He's probably sees them and doesn't even recognize them. Like, who are you? And it's like, I'm your son, actually. You know what I mean? Like that's probably gets
great grandson. I'm your third cousin or something. Like, okay, sure.
Yeah. For Adam, it would be like everybody though. It's like anyone that's alive. He's like, yeah, my kids. Like,
right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So
kiss him on the forehead and keep it moving.
Yeah, so again, it wouldn't be immediate, but over those hundreds of years, you would have hundreds of thousands, millions, possibly even a billion people, because you know how it's how compounding interest works. You start in your 20s compounding, and you're not making very much money, but by the time you're in your 40s or 50s, you have a ton of money. That's how it would work. And so that's why Cain built his cities. And keep in mind, some of those cities might have already been there because we had the angelic civilizations that were there beforehand, that were flooded. And we talked about this in the last episode, that the angels were on Earth for an indeterminate period of time. We don't know how long they were there before this rebellion, where God had to destroy everything and then start the replenishment that we'll be covering in this episode, and probably the next one. So he built cities, but there could have been remnants of those cities already there. I mean, there's some people who believe that the pyramids were not built by humans at all, that they might have been part of this angelic civilization, because we don't know how they were made. They were amazing, these amazing structures that were doing things that we can't replicate to this day.
Yeah. Have you seen the latest news, Ed? I know you're not really.
Yeah, that they're finding stuff, that they radar shown like some stuff like a mile. I haven't done it
because the radar images, like I'm on the fence about it, because a lot of the CG generated imagery that we're seeing is like fully fleshed out, and it shows these pillars that stretch deep into that stretch deep into the earth. Yeah, I don't know if it's like a mile or something like that. And then there's like these pillars that stretch down into these gigantic cubes.
Let's get rid of that.
That one did look like and I just know like the way that the radar works is like that's not the image that you're getting, and so I don't know what to make of it. People are extrapolating into pretty great reaches, in my estimation, but I don't know. It goes into that whole like, what do the Inca believe? Well, they believe that they actually discovered the megalithic structures in Peru, and that it was created by a race of giants that were destroyed in a flood, and they were also cannibalistic.
Yeah, I'm convinced that. I'm fairly convinced that a lot of these megalithic structures were created either by the angelic civilizations before humanity, or by the Nephilim during that period of time.
Yeah,
Because
I
again, we
don't
know that
know.
the fallen angels gave humanity a lot of information,
Hmm.
and I
It's
think
kind
they
of
may have
funny.
used it. Yeah, go
You've
ahead.
got like these modern conservative journalists now, like Jack Posobiec, and he's talking about the pyramids, and he's like, well, let me tell you, it's a bombshell. Have you guys heard of the Nephilim? And I'm like, you
What? Who?
kidding me
What?
right now? Yeah, and everyone's like, wow. And I was like, this is incredible. Like, we've been talking
Yeah.
about this for a year. L.A. Marzuli's been talking about for 100
Yeah,
years.
seriously.
Hmm.
But it's a new subject now, so it's
Yeah.
very interesting. It's in the forefront.
Ed, I wanted to go back a little bit before we
Yeah.
continue on. So we're talking about this sort of poetry, right? Then and it's describing how God makes, the universe and the world and us. And what I find fascinating is I don't really know what to make of it, but this idea of like God using the word, and it's something that comes up very often in our research because telepathy is big on the menu right now because of the telepathy tapes, but not necessarily going there. I just wonder, like, if speech and the ability to prophesy and God using the word, these things highlight how powerful our own words are, right? You talk about if you want
Yes.
something to exist in the real world, you have to speak it into the spiritual world first. It exists there, and then it goes on. It's almost like music is a then some. Like it's levels above it. It's like if the word is powerful, if speaking is powerful, then music and I would guess because words are, harmonics, they're frequencies, but you're doing something above and beyond that. You're manipulating those harmonics and frequencies to the nth degree if you are, especially if there's more than like I think about the angels singing holy, holy, holy. And I'm like, why are they singing?
Right.
Why aren't they just saying it? Like, why aren't they holy, 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 holy? Like they're not doing that. They're singing it. There's like this resounding music to what they're doing. And so it just has me caught up as we're talking on this concept of music and singing and is that like a form of prophesying or using the word, but like a higher level of it?
Yeah, you hit on a lot of stuff there. So let me break some of it down. No, in a good way, because this is great. So we may have I know we talked about this in our Speed of Light episode back in the day. I think my first episode with you guys. We may have covered it last week. But when you get down to the quantum level, the subatomic particle level, we talked about electrons. Electrons are, they're the ones those are the particles that are circling the atom that give us the illusion of structure because of the electromagnetic fields, and so we have this illusion of solidity, but we're actually not that solid. I mean, we're mostly empty space.
Yeah, you said if you scaled it up, that
Right.
the nucleus would be like the size of a softball, and that the orbiting electrons would be like all the way in
7
the end
miles.
zone of a football field if you place the nucleus in the center.
Right. Yeah. Well, if the nucleus was the size of like the head of a pin, it would be the end zones of a
Head of a
football
pin,
field.
okay.
If you made it the size of a softball, the electrons will be circling like 7 miles in diameter.
Damn.
Yeah.
So, but the part of the atom that is actually substance, that actually has weight, where we get our atomic weights, and you've seen on the periodic charts in your, in high school chemistry or whatnot, that comes from the protons. But protons and neutrons, but when you break a proton down, it's made of quarks and leptons. The and the quarks, when you break them down, they're actually made of vibrations. So at the fundamental level, the thing that make up the actual substance of the atom is vibrations. What are vibrations? Vibrations are sounds. We know we live in an ordered universe. So what would you call ordered vibrations? Words. That's what we're doing now. We're speaking ordered vibrations. That's why it makes sense that God would speak or sing the universe into existence. And that's one of the many reasons why I believe in the Bible, because it's the only information source we have that matches what quantum physics has shown us. It's the only one that says that the universe was spoken or sung into existence, which matches what we know from quantum physics, that our universe is made of ordered vibrations. And when you get to the song aspect of it, let me make this point out, and I'll let you go, Top. And that is, if you've looked at the work of, I guess, a Japanese scientist I'm going to mess up his name, but that's like Hashimoto or something like that. Forgive me if I screw that up. But he did this work where he played music and saw how those vibrations affected water.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you guys have heard that. You've seen
It's like cymatics, right? You could do
Right.
the same thing with like sand or salt.
And it makes these beautiful patterns
Mhm.
when it's music. Much more so. But he said, if you spoke words of kindness, if you spoke words of loving words, affirmations, it made great patterns. But music made amazing, beautiful, complex patterns.
Huh.
So I think that goes into what you're saying, Raven. It's something about music, something about those harmonics.
Think about
Take
that
words to
too.
a higher level.
We
And
talk
remember
about.
that
Oh,
the
I'm
entity
sorry, Ed.
called Satan or Lucifer, what was his job before he fell? He
Yeah.
led the worship songs.
So
Yep, go
so
ahead.
our realm is made up of patterns, right? They're fractals.
Fractals,
That's
Fibonacci,
so
circles,
right.
spirals.
So if speaking creates a certain degree of patterns, but then singing creates exponentially more patterns, more complex patterns, more interconnecting patterns, then man, I mean, that also, just given the nature of our realm when we observe it and its fractal nature, this whole as above, so below, it's like what you observe on the macro, you will also observe on the micro. How would you achieve such a level of dynamic patterns? Well, singing,
Yeah.
I guess.
Think of how songs affect us more so than words. Think about how you feel when someone's giving you a speech. Oh yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Versus someone singing a beautiful song. It affects you completely differently. I mean, you can. I was listening to a song. I mean, this is just. I'm not promoting this particular person. I like his music. He's a relatively new singer by the name of October London. That's the kid's name, and he sounds a lot like Marvin Gaye, who, you know, my parents grew up listening to Marvin Gaye. You know, I was listening to him as I was a kid before he died. He had this amazing voice. And so this guy, so hearing Marvin Gaye sing takes me back to my childhood. And this new singer, October London, who sounds a lot like Marvin, he has this song out called Mulholland Drive. And I know that because that's in Southern California where I grew up. Mulholland Drive is this area, and it's above Beverly Hills. And if you're on that drive, you have great views of like the mountains and the oceans. And listening to the lyrics of that song, it just took me back to my childhood. I had this just amazing nostalgic feeling just from this music. It affected me. It changed my mood completely. And you guys know that your favorite song changes your mood. The song that you and your wife, you know, had maybe at your wedding, or that your favorite song, it can change things completely. So I think music has an amazing effect, not just on us, but on reality.
Yeah, that's one of my, I guess, like the genesis of my looking into this. I guess so. When you look into the frequency, you're looking into the supernatural, which I didn't realize at the time. But I was playing guitar in the church that's where I met my wife, and I became obsessed with this idea of perfect or relative pitch. So I bought a bunch of books about it. I read about it, and there was this one guy that he had it was a podcast before podcasts were really a thing, and he had an audio series, and I would listen to it over and over. I listened to it when I slept. I'd internalize like middle C and things like that. But what I noticed, the thing that I learned from this the most is that I was like, this guy is putting me in a trance. And then I realized quickly, like I wasn't political at all, but I was like, oh, Barack Obama's doing the same thing. He was the president at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm like, but he's not singing to me. He's only talking to me. But it's the timbre in his voice, and it's the inflections in that he's specifically choosing, because this guy has perfect pitch or relative pitch, which is, you know, it's just the ability to choose a note and then choose the accompanying notes, or be able to like identify them at least. But this guy, I think he had it to a much higher level. And I think that Barack Obama, I think a lot of people do, they're like singing to you. Even when they're speaking, they're choosing these inflections importantly in an important manner, and people become seduced by it. You become entranced by it. So I'm like, that was my genesis of realizing, oh my God, what are they doing here? There's something more to this. It's brilliant.
It is like,
I'm gonna say something. Go ahead, Raymond.
I was just going to say, it is imparting a lot more information, music in particular, than it looks like on a surface level. Like if you read lyrics, you kind of are left being like, what the fuck is this even talking about? But when you hear them through the medium of the music, it's like a delivery vehicle for exponentially more information somehow.
If done correctly.
Yeah, if done correctly, because the music has like an emotional connotation, and it is like a manipulation. But what it does is it takes something that on pen and paper looks very simple, and it makes it incredibly dynamic when it hits you, when you receive it, and then all of a sudden it's full of meaning. That's very, very interesting.
Yeah, so I want to say something that's going to piss a bunch of people off, which is great.
Here we go.
Well, I'll get that second. That'll be the second part of what I'm going to say. The first part is like what you were saying, Top, that there are certain frequencies, and I have no musical talent whatsoever. I don't play an instrument or anything, but I was reading about how these certain frequencies, like I don't know if it's, you can correct me on this, like 433 versus 4, apparently at some point in the past, like 100 years ago, all instruments were tuned to a certain frequency,
Hertz.
like 430 something hertz, and then
432. So
432. Okay, and then
middle A. So the way that the piano works is that's how you're gonna like tune most instruments. But middle A was tuned to 432 hertz, so it would vibrate for, let's just say, 432 times, and then the next A would vibrate twice as much, and then so on and so forth. That's how you get it. And then all the notes in between would have their corresponding vibrational numbers. That 432 was moved up 8 hertz to 440 by some people say like Goebbels, like a Nazi scientist, but then that's also disputed.
Okay.
But it's a strange one, and it's what's strange too is that even though it's 440 today, the standard, the concert pitch, if you go see somebody play violin, like an entire chorus playing violin and trumpet and stuff, they're tuned slightly sharper than 440. They're like 442 for whatever reason. It's just a concert pitch standing, concert tuning standing. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know why they did it. A lot of people say it has negative effects. So
that's what I've heard. I heard that if it's at that right pitch, not only does it have a positive effect, it can actually heal you.
Yeah.
Because our bodies are mostly water, and it can actually, those frequencies can actually bring that harmony and actually heal you. Whereas the wrong frequency can have the opposite effect. So you have people who are, and I say the entities behind them, who are doing damage with it. Remember, I said that the fallen one, Satan, the Nahash, he knows music. It said in Ezekiel 28 about, he had the timbers and all this melodies that he would. So he knows music, and he also knows the effect of music. One thing I want you to think about is the next time you watch a news show, a newscaster, they all speak in the same pitch, male or female. Have you noticed that every female newscaster has a deep voice?
Yeah, there's a standard to it. It's the preacher, like the
That's
modern.
what I'm going to say. That's going to piss people off, because they do the same thing. That's when you said Obama, it reminded me of that. And what they're doing with that tone that the newscasters use, the cadence is meant to put you into a trance. It's meant to hypnotize you and make you more susceptible to whatever they're talking about. That's why they're all trained at some point to speak in this exact same timbre, to use that exact same tone, to speak in this tone. And in the news today, you have, they all do it, male or female. And you rarely find a female newscaster who has a high voice. They're going to have a lower voice, a lower pitch to their voice. And some preachers use the same cadence, and Obama used the same. Obama sounded like a preacher. I mean, growing up in a black church, I'm like, oh, but this dude, someone took a Marxist and taught him to speak in the tone of a black preacher. And I'm not saying that's how he got elected. I mean, he's a very charismatic guy, very good speaker. I totally get it. But he was speaking in that tone, and if you remember, towards the end of Kamala Harris's campaign, when it was pretty clear she wasn't going to win, if you notice, she started doing that same thing. She had a bunch of fake accents, but she started doing the preacher's cadence.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that's what she was trained to do.
What's his name? Stu Peters did that to me, and I was like aware of it, but I'm also aware that I'm not going to do it to the people listening here. Where he said something like, Donald Trump is doing this, and he's doing it on purpose. And I'm like, okay, I see the delayed pause there, and then pick up what you're doing to me. So that's a cadence, but then there's also a frequency to the voice where I'm like slightly sensitive to, which I think Obama just perfectly nailed. Wouldn't be surprised if he has
better
that
or for worse. It's like human beings. We talk about this recently too. There's like a giant percentage of population that is susceptible to hypnosis, and then there's like a smaller percentage of population that you just can't do it to. And I think that, not to say that cadence itself is bad, but it is a way to hijack that part of the mind that is susceptible to hypnosis. Well, there's a rhythm, there's a lull.
There is, and it gets you into a susceptible state that opens you up. It downgrades or it rather suppresses
disarms
your critical thinking, the critical thinking portions of your brain. So you aren't.
It disarms you, Ed.
Sorry.
Yeah, it disarms you.
Yeah, exactly. It completely disarms you. And that's why politicians use it. And that's why, here's the part that's going to piss people off. That's why a lot of these TV preachers use that cadence. Not only do they use a cadence, so dude, if you watch, I don't recommend you watch TV preachers, but you'll hear them, or just even preachers of a lot of large churches will do this thing where they'll say, you know what, touch your neighbor and say blah blah blah. That, because again, I have my background's in psychology. That's where my education is. That is a form of mass hypnosis.
Yeah,
you say a word, combine it with a touch, and now you are hypnotizing the crowd. You just tap your neighbor and say, God's going to give you blah blah blah. You are that. Those are mass hypnosis techniques. That's not accidental.
That does not work on me. When I go to a church and they start doing that, I become not like very uncomfortable, but like I cannot suspend whatever this mechanism is that keeps me an individual and won't allow me to become like something else because really when you're dealing with like a mass hypnosis on that sort of a scale where you're doing it to an entire room, you're creating almost in that scenario a hive mind. And I can't detach from the individual and then become part of the hive mind. So that stuff always makes me it just makes me uncomfortable. It's just weird. I feel very weird.
We another thing about frequencies, we resonate to the frequency of other people. And the more people who are there, the more we resonate. I mean, you go to, I think I talked about this when Sam Tripoli and I, we were like, before I was doing one of his shows, we were having a pre-discussion. And I was telling him that you've noticed, and he's noticed this as a comedian, if other people are laughing, you're going to laugh, and you may come and afterwards you might get, that wasn't even that funny, but everyone's synced into the same frequency. And Sam was like, yeah, I need to make sure someone's funnier comes on before me so that people are already synced up into laughter. But
it's suggesting it too. Like Dave Chappelle does it. He'll tell a joke and he'll go with his mic, he'll go and slap it on his leg, and then that's you laugh now. That's what he's telling you. Exactly. Yeah, and they go, oh shit, everybody laughs. Like,
and Top talks about this all the time too. When he used to play in the church, you were like the same way that an opening comedian warms up the crowd and gets everybody in that frequency is the same way that you would describe warming up the crowd to get ready to like receive the word of God, right? You're getting everybody in this, and that's what I'm saying. It's like I don't think that practice is innately bad.
No.
It's just like when somebody else with bad intentions realizes that they can do that to people, that's where the problem slips in.
It's
but
how you use it.
Yes, maybe there is a proper mechanism, a real good reason for us to slip into that state of mind. But
there's there's like the practice just is, and that's really all there is to it. Like that's what we've been discovering on the show. Like I know the guy Donnie Darkin called me what did he call me? Truther, new age, being new age truth. I was like, no. These things just are.
Right.
I'm just saying that they are. But they can be used in many different ways. But they do exist. So to act like they don't is kind of stupid. And I don't know.
It's about how you use it in intention, and understand that again, the best lie is sandwiched between two truths. I was on another podcast with someone, and they were asking me, do I believe in manifestation and like the law of attraction, all that kind of stuff? And I said, and do I recommend it for Christians? And I said, here's the thing. You have to take the practice and separate it from the intention or the corruption. Because he was saying, because someone was on his show saying that Jesus spoke about manifestation because there's a verse where Jesus says, when you pray, I'm paraphrasing, pray as if believing it already happened and it will happen. Well, that sounds a lot like what people manifestation say, like Neville Goddard and Jose Silva and all these people who are into manifestation. They say the same thing. Don't talk about it like it's in the future. Say, like, if you want to be rich, say I am rich now. I'm currently rich. I am wealthy. I am successful. Blah blah blah. You say it in the present tense. And he says, isn't that what Jesus said? Well, what did Jesus actually say? He said, when you pray,
right?
Pray. So it's not just. But so that's the truth. But if you are in the new age, you're not going to put that part where praying to God. You're just going to say, well, just you can think of it. You can pray to the universe,
which is paganism.
Kind of so the truth is, yes, when you pray, believe, have faith as if it's already happened. But the lie is, well, you can do that without praying, without having God involved, without knowing what God's will is. Because if you pray according to God's will, well, then yes, God's going to do it for you because he said he would. But if you pray to the universe or whatever and just speak and try to speak into existence without having the other part of the conjunctive that Jesus said, well, that's the corruption of it. So it takes a truth and wraps it and puts a lie into it.
It's the same thing I feel when it comes to like numerology. It's like, is numerology inherently evil? It's like, no, it seems to be some way that you can observe the realm that we exist in and determine that numbers play a huge role in it in a way that exceeds just random chance. And so is that noticing of those building blocks inherently evil? No, but I think what ends up happening is people realize they can manipulate them because they are the fundamental building blocks of this realm.
And back to the argument, I guess we'll call it an argument. I was saying like, hey, we're noticing that these guys are doing bad stuff, and he was like, that's exactly what David Icke says, and he's this, and I was like, yeah, but it does exist.
Happening, right?
Yeah,
right.
So like, I don't really know what to do. Like, should we just close my eyes and this never happened? That's stupid.
And as far as I'm concerned, my love for the truth is very synonymous with my love for Jesus Christ, because I do believe that he is the embodiment of truth. And that we're not called to have such a passionate, burning love for the truth and then to not address it. You know what I mean? It's like, what is the point in seeing the truth or what you think might actually be the truth and then not taking action on it? And that action could be as simple as just saying it, espousing it. Don't keep it in. Like, say the truth as you see it. I don't believe we're supposed to keep our mouth shut about it. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, and all this might, if some people who are listening now might be asking, okay, well, how do I know the difference between the truth and the lie? And that is really the purpose of the Bible study that I do, which in the purpose of faith by reason in general is helping you to understand who God is and how he does things, what his methodology is, so that you know that if something diverges from that, then you know, well, I should question it. Yeah. So you really need to know. I think we talked about this before, like that how to detect a counterfeit. You detect a counterfeit by being intimately aware of what the real is. So if you see anything that diverges from that, then you know it's counterfeit. So yeah, and that's why I recommend just knowing God as well as you possibly can, and I try to help with that so that you can see, okay, this part of it is true. Yeah, believe, but you have to believe according to God's will. So if someone says you can just believe and it's going to happen, well, that means that, okay, let's say, I'm married. I see a woman who's really hot and I want to bang her. And I say, well, I'm just going to try to manifest that. It's not going to work because it's not God's will for me to cheat on my wife.
Right.
And if it's not God's will for you to be rich, not because he doesn't want you to have stuff, but because he knows that if you get a bunch of money, it's going to wreck you.
Yeah.
Then you're not going to be rich. And if you do want to be, then you need to change your mindset to the point where money isn't what you worship. It's just, a tool, some freedom to get you to, be your true self and do what God wants for you. Then he has no problem with you having money. But if you're going to worship it and put it before him, then you're not going to get a dime. So if you want a bunch of money, and you think that that's your destiny, then say, you know what, money is just a tool for me to have the freedom to be what God's will is for me.
I wonder this too. This is an interesting question from Teresa. She says, how do you take action? This is back to what we were just talking about with, when you see the truth, what's the action that you take? And I don't know that it has to be action in the physical sense. We've already established how powerful, being able to speak is. And so maybe it is enough in very many ways to tell the truth. It's like when a martyred saint is proclaiming the name of Jesus Christ, he is telling the truth all the way up until the moment where he's decapitated. Right. And we look at that and we go, that's incredibly profound and powerful. And so maybe that is the power, is if you see it, you're meant to speak on it.
But there's a conjunctive with that. And we get that from, we talked about this in the Revelation series with the 7 letters to 7 churches. The first letter was to the church at Ephesus, and they were the church that they were great on doctrine, but they didn't have love. And Jesus' admonition to them essentially was, speak the truth in love. So you can speak the truth, but the conjunctive is speak it in love. And by that, it doesn't mean, have a bunch of just drippy, oh, I love you so much. No, love means giving without the expectation of getting anything in return. Basically, you're speaking truth to help people. You're not speaking truth to try to win a fight. You're not speaking truth to make somebody feel bad. You're speaking truth for their benefit. So speaking the truth in love is saying, I'm telling you that this is true, and because it's going to be beneficial to you. So that's what I would tell the person who just had to ask that question. Speak the truth for the benefit of the person you're speaking the truth to, not for for it. And
Everybody's getting caught up in this thing right now where it's like, because you notice one thing or another, that means what? It means we have to organize? Does it mean we have to go out into the streets and we got to do, like, what do you talk? I think if you can get enough people to just tell the truth, then eventually it shifts the I don't want to call it like the collective consciousness, but there will be a consensus, a tipping point eventually. If everybody hears the truth and sees the truth for long enough in a large amount, then it'll shift. We'll all shift as a species, as humanity. We'll focus on the truth.
Yeah, that's the point. I think this is where I'm led with that book I'm doing on the little season. It's what God convicted me of, because I've been getting into battles with people, and that's not what he wanted me to do. He says, you can speak the truth, but speak it for the benefit. Don't speak it to try to win an argument. Which is what I've been doing. I admit to this, and it was wrong of me. I had been just trying to, whenever someone would come at me, I would just, speak. I would just say, well, here's how you're wrong. This is why there's no evidence. But I was doing it to try to win the argument. I wasn't doing it to try to help the person. So what I want to do with my book is, yes, I'm going to speak the truth about, what's going on with this little season and all the faults of it. But I'm going to speak it in order to help people who, number one, who are confused about it, and number two, who believe it, I think it's harmful. And here's why I think it's harmful. And here's how I want to help you resolve the issue that I believe is causing you to hold on so tightly to what I believe is, again, a very harmful thing. So I had to change myself. I had to, have some humility and say, my motivation needs to be pure if I want God to bless what I'm going to do.
This is great. This is JC. Who's one of our favorite people, and he says, I don't think it's the responsibility of any individual to try to save the whole world. That was Jesus's role. We all fall short of Jesus. We can try to be a positive influence in our circle. And I'm
Exactly.
like, that I agree with that. Everybody's looking for the answer. What do we do? How do we mobilize? And it's like, just speak the truth amongst your people.
Yeah, it's also okay to be like, I don't really know. I don't.
That too, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just.
I get questions all the time, and I don't know the answer to all of them. But what I'll say is, hey, I don't know. I'm going to do some research. Let me talk to some people who are smarter than me. I've got people in my circle who are my mentors, and I'll go to them and I'll say, hey, I got this question. I'm not really sure if I have the right answer. Let's talk it over. But the person who just put JC, great. That was absolutely correct. You cannot change the world, but what you can do is plant a seed. And you let God water it. I mean, that's biblical. I mean, God says, what the Apostle Paul was doing when he was establishing churches, he wasn't trying to, save the world. He said, I'm just going to plant a church. He literally called it, I'm planting a church. And then God will water that seed and that'll grow. And then God gets all the credit and the glory. And you get the credit for planting the seed. That's all Paul did, was go around the Mediterranean planting seeds. And obviously it's grown into, the church, the church that we have today. And and the same thing with Jesus. Jesus, and this is one of the things to talk about, and I'm not going to get to the little season stuff anymore, but Jesus was basically, his ministry for 3.5 years, he was only in Israel, this little area about the size of New Jersey on the coast of the Mediterranean. That's all he did. He preached to a few people there, and he planted those seeds, which has grown to a worldwide church. And so the point is, that's your job. Speak the truth in love to your circle, your influence. And if it's the truth that God wants to spread, he'll take care of it.
Yeah. I think that's in some ways why this show has grown in the way that it has, is because we set out with just a bunch of questions. And then as we went forward and some of those questions found answers, we discovered information that we found compelling. And we thought, it's not to say, I always say, we don't have a stranglehold on the truth by any means, but we're not lying. And we're just trying to show you what we suspect is the truth. And that's literally all this show is just taking in information and incorporating it into our worldview, and then turning around and showing people like, hey, I think this has some veracity to it. And what a simple, modality that is turned into something huge that reaches tens of thousands of people. So I would say in my own life, I have experienced just that. If you plant a seed and it's a good one, God will water it.
Yeah, totally. So let's see. I'm just looking at my notes. So I guess another thing we talked about the poetry. We talked about how that works, and so let's take a step back to just getting back to where we were in the last episodes. We had the angelic rebellion. The Elohim rebelled. for those reasons. I think that they just, again, the origin of sin, of like you said, what it was, Top, is missing the mark. But if you getting a little detailed into it, it's basically wanting something outside of God's will. It's outside of his plan for you. That's the origin of how sin starts. Wanting it isn't the sin. Doing it is the sin. So again, Adam and Eve wanted to be like the Elohim. Wanting it wasn't the sin. It was like, okay, now because I want this, I'm going to disobey God. And that led to it. So I think, so whatever caused this fall of the angelic realm, some of them must have wanted something beyond what God had planned for them. But in any case, he takes care of it. God defeats them. And now it says he was brooding over the face of the waters, and that term of waters is ma'im. It means, yes, it can mean waters, just like Nachash can mean serpent in a certain context as a noun, but it means the shining one. That's what Adam and Eve were talking to in the garden. They weren't talking to a snake. They were talking to a shining one. Ma'im can mean water in a certain context, but it also means it means corruption. It means chaos. It actually, if you look at the actual, it's kind of vulgar when you look at the euphemism in Hebrew. It actually means urine or semen. That's what ma'im means as a euphemism. So basically, like we say, you're full of shit. A Hebrew would say, yeah, you're full of ma'im. So it's a negative. There's a negative connotation about ma'im. It's just this, it's ungodly, this polluted, chaotic thing. So God is over the face of the ma'im. He's hovering over it. And he's brooding like, okay, this didn't work. What am I going to do next? And so there's chaos everywhere. This ma'im is everywhere. And darkness is everywhere. And so what God he says, okay, I'm going to replenish the earth. And that's what happens in the 6 days of creation. He is replenishing it. He's, because the first thing he does, he brings light back into the world, meaning that his light was taken out of the physical realm. The spiritual realm is what it is. It's always a realm of light because that's where God dwells. But the earthly realm, the physical realm, was full of darkness and covered in this ma'im everywhere, which is why I don't believe it was physical water, because basically the entire physical universe was ma'im. So it was something else. And so the first thing he does, he says, let there be light. He brings back light, but it's not all light like it was before. I think before this, the whole universe, physical universe and the spiritual realm was all light. God said he separated the light from the darkness, and he called the light day and the darkness night. God was crazy.
I like that. God was crushing. He was, dude. He was.
So still crushing.
Still crushing.
Exactly. So why did he make night? And I talk about this in the video in detail in the video that's going to come out next week. Well, what is the reason that? Because he knew he was going to create different living beings. He was going to create animals and us. We need night to repair. That's what happens at night. That's why you have to sleep. I mean, two things we can't go without for a few days: water and sleep. If you go for like 4 days without water, you're going to die. And we also know that if you go for more than 4 or 5 days without sleep, you will die. Why? Because sleep is where you repair. And if you can't repair, that's what life is. Life is the ability to repair. As long as you can repair any damage that's done to you, you will live. If you get to the point where you cannot repair the damage that's done to you, then you're dead. So that's a really important thing. He's making life that has the ability to repair. The angels didn't have that. They don't have the ability to repair. That's why angels can't repent. Repenting is admitting you're wrong and turning from it and repairing. So God knew. I made I made entities that were like closer to me, that were all spiritual, that had all the knowledge, and they can't repent because they can't if you have knowledge, you're not making a mistake. You're doing it intentionally. So God said, okay, if I'm going to have these beings who are not perfect like me, and they're going to screw up, I need to bake in the ability for them to repair. Otherwise, I'm going to have the same problem I had with the angels who fell. So creating night means that we have the ability to repair. So that's the first thing he did. And the second thing he did on the second day, and I'm not going to go any further than that on this episode, he put in the firmament. He separated the ma'im. He created what in firmament means. The word in Hebrew is rakia. It means an expanse with a solid top. It's like almost like a vault. So he created an expanse between ma'im that was over the land and the ma'im that was above the land. So that's what the firmament is. That's that expanse. And it's a really interesting topic. So when I do my Mysteries of Creation bonus video, I'm going to give my deeper thoughts on what I think the firmament might be, because it's really interesting. Some people think it's the Van Allen belt. If you were a flat earther, then you think that, then you believe that that it's the expanse, and then there's Ma'im above us, and you have the flat plane on top, and then you have the flat earth on the bottom, or the flat plane that we're on. And I get it, because honestly, I'll be frank with you, the firmament makes more sense on a flat plane. I'm not saying that I'm completely sold on us being on a flat earth, but I will admit that the firmament makes more sense there. It can make more sense on a round earth as well, but again, I'll get into that more. But those are the things that God was doing. So God is doing is repair work. He's bringing light back in. He's making sure that his new creation will have the ability to repair any damage that they do spiritually and physically. And he's getting rid of the chaos. And I'll end with this and let you guys talk. If you notice, during the creation narrative, it always ends. Every day of creation ends with an evening and morning were the first day. Evening and morning were the second day. Now, does that mean sunrise and sunset? Eventually it would mean that, but remember, he doesn't create the sun until day 4. So what did evening and morning mean? Well, the evening and morning in Hebrew are Erev and Bokor. What it means is going from chaos to order. Every day, the chaos becomes less and the order becomes more. And that came to mean, that's why, the Jewish day starts at sunset, because evening and morning. And the reason that it became to mean evening and morning is because at nighttime is a time of chaos. As the sun goes down, back in ancient times, there was no electric lights. So when the sun went down, you couldn't see. And the predatory animals were out. And so it's chaotic. You don't have any control. But as the sun starts coming up, well, now you see there's more order. Now you can see better and better as the sun gets higher in the sky. So evening and morning is going from a chaotic state to a more orderly state. And you'll see this when we'll talk about this next time. The order of creation, everything gets more and more orderly. And he ends it with the ultimate orderly creation, which is humanity, mankind, which is orderly because it has the Spirit of God breathed into it. So that is the highest level of order that God creates. But everything else is lesser. So you see a progression of things becoming more and more orderly on every day of creation.
I have a buddy, and he's in a weird spot with his faith right now. And I actually can't help him because I don't have, much of sort of, biblical text is still a learning process for me. Like I'm still in the middle of it. And so I don't have answers for him. But essentially what's happened is he has determined that Greek is the proper translation. It actually, how do I say this? It's a richer language, and it according to him displays much more about a word than Hebrew or English does. The way he put it was like he thinks that Hebrew or English only covers about 5% of what the translation actually means. And through one thing or another, he's determined that some of these Greek translations are harrowing and upsetting. And I'm not even sure the nature of what he means yet, because I don't have the ability to engage with this. This is like above my pay grade. I have to do a lot more learning before I can start to engage with such a complex topic. And I feel bad. I feel bad because he feels bad. He doesn't like what he thinks that he's learning. Okay. And like I said, I haven't even really been able to engage with what he thinks he's learning, because I recognize like this is black belt shit, and I'm still working on my blue belt. So I wanted to ask you in regards to translations, which one do you think is actually more dynamic, Hebrew or Greek?
Okay, good question. First of all, have your friend write his questions down and let me know what they are. And I'll help where I can. If I can't, like I said, I have people smarter than me who I go to when I get stuck.
He's translating the book of Daniel in Greek.
Okay.
Which I already told you makes no sense. It's written in Hebrew.
Yeah.
I just don't. Yeah, you're going to get different translations because it's not the same language. So it could extrapolate to anything, but that's one big flaw.
Right. Good point. Now, as far as Greek is concerned, he is correct with the New Testament, because it was written originally in Greek, and you are going to get the fullest understanding of it if you look at what the words are in Greek. That's why because I had a Q&A a couple weeks ago that I did on Patreon where I addressed the question of, what, because I get questioned all the time, what Bible should we use? And I gave my thoughts on, which I think are the most accurate Bibles. I say stay away from paraphrases, like the Message is the worst, and even things like the Contemporary English Bible and so forth and so on, because they're paraphrases of the King James. The more accurate ones are things like the American Standard Version, Young's Literal Translation. If you want to do study, I would recommend the Amplified Bible. But I said more important than that is have a good interlinear source. Like online, I recommend Blue Letter Bible. That's the one I use, because it takes every verse and it will above every word or next to every word, it will give you the original Greek or Hebrew. You can click on it and then you get the definition of what that word means. So yes, so as far as the New Testament is concerned, Greek, absolutely. Is Greek richer than Hebrew? That's debatable. I think that Hebrew and Greek are two very, very accurate languages, and that's why I believe that God inspired the Bible to be written in those two languages. I mean, an example is because our English language is extremely imprecise. I mean, like we have one word for love. I may have mentioned this before. I can say, I love my wife, I love my dog, I love ice cream. Well, that's not the same kind of love.
Right.
I don't love my wife, I love ice cream. And if I love my dog, like I love my wife, that's probably illegal in most states. You can't, but it's the same word. Whereas in Greek, you have different words where you have agapeo, which is, the divine love, the love you should have for God. Agape means to give yourself over to something. You have eros, which is romantic love. You have phileo, which is brotherly love. So there's you have, different words for spousal love. So if I say, I eros my friend, say, oh, so you like to bang your friend? Because that's eros, is that kind of love. But if I say I phileo this guy, oh, yes, that's your buddy. So it's precise. English is not. So English, you have to read a lot into it. But Hebrew is pretty similar in that, Hebrew is a very, very precise language. So I guess it really depends on what he means when he says rich. I don't know. So have him define what he means by a richer language.
Yeah.
But Greek and Hebrew are excellent languages. And he's probably, and I assume he's reading the Septuagint, because the Septuagint is the Greek translation of the Old Testament that was done about a couple hundred years before Jesus, his first advent. And the reason was, at that time, the Greek Empire had conquered, the Mediterranean world, and the Greeks, forced everyone to give up their native language and speak Greek. So Greek was a common language of the realm of that area. And so most of the Israelites during that time didn't speak Hebrew. But all the scriptures were in Hebrew. So they commissioned these group of 70 scholars, and that's what the word Septuagint means, the 70. And they had 70 Hebrew scholars rewrite the Old Testament in Greek, and that's where we get the Septuagint. And that's the Bible that actually Jesus quoted from. That's the Bible that Paul used. They used the Septuagint. So that doesn't make it better than Hebrew. It's just that was just a common Bible in the first century. Go ahead, Top.
Now the guy that he's talking about is more. I guess he's talking about that stuff, but he's also bringing up the idea of the demiurge, and he's having internal struggles with God being evil, and also Jesus giving sermons next to with naked children. This idea, I'm like, I don't know. Stick to exposing internet personalities and not the Bible, because that might be above your pay grade. It's a little bit annoying and a little bit dramatic for no reason, which is what we've gotten from this person over and over.
I've seen this dude. He does really great research, and he's been a buddy of mine on Twitter since I first got on there.
I disagree. He does great Google searches. Good job. You found out
whatever the
that
case
one guy
may be.
runs a fan page for Donald Trump and also a page that says he's the Antichrist. That's it. Besides that, I'll be honest, you've been a fucking annoyance to me. And not just because of this, but this has been one of my final straws in dealing with this person, where I'm like, I'm just not even going to talk to you anymore. And I had already told him, like, just forget I exist, because I think you're homosexual in a derogatory way, not because you actually do that, but maybe you do. I'm just done. I'm completely done with this person for many other reasons, but this is one of them. And I'm just extremely bored by the argument. We were going to have him on to talk about something, and this is the subject that he brought up. No interest. That's where I'm at.
Well, that's my thing with it is I am a fan of his. I would say that, and I would also say that for a long time I've watched him, defend Jesus Christ and put out pretty good information, especially when it comes to the whole beast system and the harlot and everything, which is something that's not just unique to him. There's a lot of other people doing this research, but he does do, and from where I'm sitting, I might just be retarded. But it does look like he does good research. And I just hate to see a guy that was about that for the longest time all of a sudden find himself in a place where he's expressing that he's not happy about it. He doesn't like this.
David, from where
but
I'm
I
sitting,
just don't have any ability to
I'm
help
watching
him.
a guy that's a faceless, anonymous profile stir up drama on the internet and claim he is one thing, and then all of a sudden bring up the worst talking points about the Bible that have been, well, in my opinion, I mean, he's bringing up Adam Green talking points, and I'm just like, why am I even talking to this guy? It's the only words I can use to describe it is gay. And I told that to, well, if he was in front of me, I'd tell it to his face, but I told him in private messages, and I tell him online too if it didn't get me banned. It's gay. Entire thing you're doing.
And again, I don't know this guy or what his research is, but it sounds like that he or whatever research he's doing is mixing the Bible with a lot of paganism. That's the kind of stuff that Billy Carson would do when he would talk about the demiurge. And what you're doing with that is you're taking not the actual scripture, not the original scripture, the Masoretic text, or the text, the received text, or any of those which we can date back to many, a couple of thousand years or more, so that we have some confidence that they're the real text. I think he's taking some things that are paganistic and mixing them in. An example of that, which I think I'm going to talk about in one of my bonus episodes, is the idea of Lilith, being the first wife of Adam. And of course, that's not biblical. But people will read that in and they say, well, the Bible just, someone X's out of the Bible. That's what I hear all the time. Well, the Catholic Church or whoever took things out of the Bible or put things into the Bible, and in order to just give us a different idea of what really happened. And again, I'm the last person who's going to defend the Vatican, but I would say they didn't do that. We know that because we have scriptures that are aged back to the time before Christ, and that are virtually identical to what we have today. I mean, I think Wes Huff was on Joe Rogan talking about this, with the Dead Sea Scrolls. We have the entire book of Isaiah was found in the Dead Sea Scrolls in 1948, and they dated to the 3rd century BC. It was virtually identical to the book of Isaiah we have now. So all that corruption stuff, you can't prove it. But what they'll do is they'll take some paganistic stuff and that sounds similar to what the Bible says, and they'll mix it in there. Remember what we were just talking about. The best lie is sandwiched between two truths. So you have the truth of the original couple, and then they'll throw Lilith in there. Well, that was Adam's first wife, and she didn't want to submit to him, so God kicked her out of Eden and made Eve. No, if you actually look at the origin of Lilith, that's the paganistic Sophia, the goddess of wisdom. So what they did, they're just taking this pagan goddess and inserting her into the biblical narrative and saying, oh yeah, this was Adam's first wife. She was the wise one. She was the first girl boss, basically, using the current vernacular. And Adam was too stubborn. He had toxic masculinity. He says, I don't want this woman talking back to me. And God, get rid of her and give me a nice, submissive wife. That's not what happened. That's these people basically they have their agenda because they are believing in the divine feminine and whatnot. And if that appeals to you, and I understand it appeals to a lot of women, and it appeals to them not because of the truth, but because other people have twisted the Bible the other way around and saying men are dominant. We're the smart ones. Women, you should always be under our heel. And if you're a woman, you're like, I don't believe that. I don't believe I'm less than a man. Oh, here's this idea over here about the divine feminine. And Lilith and her standing up to Adam and Adam kicking her out, and that's patriarchy. That resonates with me, so I'm going to believe that. That's where you get into problems.
Yeah, I just find myself in a weird position because you like to think that if somebody brings you a topic that is biblical and they're struggling with it, and you make biblical content, and I know ad nauseum I've expressed to people that I am new to this and I'm learning, but it feels very shit to have this thing. Like, I don't even want to engage with it, because if I engage with it, if I bring it on the show, and I just simply don't have the information, because it's not what this show is really, right? We have people, they come on, they present information. It's very far in between that we give people pushback. We allow them to say their thing. Well, that format wouldn't work, because I'm not going to allow you to come here and say those things without any pushback. But I simply cannot give you pushback, and I don't want to do it in an adversarial way. I wish I could do it in a way where I could be like, see where you're coming from. I've got good information. Hopefully this will make you feel a little bit better, but I can't do that. I like, not because I won't do it, because I can't do it, because I don't have that information. I'm not, privy to those sorts of things. I don't have an argument that will dispel that for this guy. And so it puts me in a weird position where, for the first time so far, I'm looking at something and I'm like, not going to engage with that on my show. Don't want to expose my audience to that. But I expose my audience to all sorts of things. But this one is just such a negative view of Jesus Christ, that knowing that I don't have the information to push back on it, I don't want to bring it here. And even if we could push back on one or two of the things, who knows what litany of shit that this guy has been exposed to, and may well have concerns. He's not saying this is definitively the truth, but this is what I'm seeing. What do you guys think? Which is the spirit of the show. This is what I'm seeing. What do you guys think?
I think,
and for the first time, I think, oh, fucking no, baby boy. Oh, no, not at all. But if I were to try to push back on an information basis, I don't have that information.
Well, I think you're lacking discernment in even dealing with this person, David. This is like the reason I wouldn't talk to him is not because of the information that he's bringing, because I think it's garbage, and I think it's been already debunked in many different ways. I mean, the reason I don't want to talk to him is because there is this like weird negativity. There is this aspect, this air of stupidity about this dude, where he'll tell me straight up who I should talk to and how I should talk to them. You're out of your fucking mind, dude. Like I said, if you're in front of my face and you said that to me, it makes me legitimately mad. Like I'd fight you. Don't do that. You're not welcome on here. I don't care what the topic is at all. It was, I don't understand how that's not like passing across your filter here about what this guy's doing and what he's been doing for the last, the entirety of like me even knowing who this guy is. It's just drama. It's just nonsense. It's bullshit. That's not what I do here. That's not what we do here on this show. We bring interesting conversation, not nonsense. So that's as far as I'm concerned with this entire thing.
Maybe you're right. I don't know. I think I probably give people more. What's the word? Like
more rope.
More of a rope than maybe a lot of other people do.
How much rope am I supposed to give him, David? This is like his third or fourth strike with me. I played baseball, like 5 strikes. What are we talking about here?
I'm not saying that you got to give him any rope. I'm just saying that if it wasn't him and somebody else bought this exact same thing across my table, I would have the exact same response, which is to say, I don't know how to deal with this. I'm not there yet, and I don't want to expose this to my audience. And I do kind of feel bad that I can't give you something that can help dispel it.
Here's my advice to him and to you, Raven, and it's something I'm just basically repeating what I've been saying like most of the show when I gave you the example of the counterfeit guy from the U.S. Mint when I went on my school trip there, and he said that he's an expert on money, but he does not study all the false fake money. He studies the real money, and if you know the real, then you will not fall for any counterfeit. And this is, I think, the greatest thing I can do to help Christians, believers, people, or even questioning, know who God is, know what the Bible is, and then you'll know that that's not in God's character. You know that it would not be in God's character to create a Lilith. I don't need to study Lilith. I don't need to study the Sophia. I don't need to study Demiurge. I don't need to study Jesus talking to naked children. I know the character of Jesus. I know the character of God. I know it intimately. So
even hearing that argument is like, it really annoys me. Especially, coming from this person, it annoys me as well. Because again, if we want to just look at, let's look at what it bears, what the fruit bears. Well, I'm looking at what we created here, and I'm like, this is pretty awesome. And I look at what this person created, and I'm like, this sucks. I would never want this. This is a garbage existence of drama and constant catty nonsense. We don't do that. We are blessed doing this. That's the number one. Look at the fruit. The argument about Jesus, like it's been it's not just been debunked, but it's so dishonest. It's kind of what Donnie Darkin was doing here, just cherry picking, and he's doing it from the other side. You're cherry picking quotes from the Bible. I said, well, let's read the last two before that, Donnie.
Exactly.
And we do it. It's like, so why were you using that to hit me with when it doesn't mean that? So that verse about Jesus in Gethsemane, it's a verse about a bunch of people there, and Jesus is about to get arrested. It's about to go down, and they yank that kid so fast away from him. They all flee away from him because they want. First, everyone's crowded around him, and then they realize he's in deep shit. I want nothing to do with him. And they pull that kid so fast that they pulled him out of his clothes. It's like cartoon shit. But also at the time, they weren't wearing underwear. These people were wearing like cloth over there.
They're wearing tunics, basically.
It's fairly. If you're not an idiot, and if you're not reading this to specifically say that Jesus was a pedophile, it's a wild thing to do. And that, like, not many things offend me when people and they say a lot of crazy shit about God, a lot of crazy shit about Christianity and Jesus. But this one here, I'm like, enough. Just read it. And then you're gonna it's just like crazy. Go read it. It's like Matthew.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, finish up.
No, go ahead.
I was saying I was having I wouldn't even call it an argument. It was like you said with this person. It was like you hear something so crazy, like, you know what, I can't even deal with you. But I was talking to this woman briefly, and she was trying to convince me that Jesus and the disciples were gay. Okay, well, what is your evidence? Well, they were all men and they all hung out together. Like, okay, so a man can't have male friends without being gay? Do you have female friends that make you gay? Do you have male friends? Are you banging all of them? Do you realize that you can hang out with someone without putting your penis in them or flicking your bean with them or whatever you want? That is so dumb. How do you walk without falling down? How can you be that not smart, that unintelligent to not? But people are like that because, like you said, Top, they're cherry picking. They have an agenda already. Her agenda was, I am pro-gay. I don't be pro-gay if you want to. I don't care about that. I'm pro-gay, so I want to make everything pro-gay. And Christians are, generally speaking, not pro-gay. Oh, well, but if I can show you that your Lord and Savior was gay, well, then that forwards my agenda. And this person probably has an agenda that they're trying to forward. But
he has an agenda. And you know what? I was told by this person, I'm taking his advice. You should properly vet your the people who come on your show before you do it, because there's consequences when they do come on the show. Well, I'm taking your advice. I properly vetted, and I'm not doing it. Fuck you.
I'll end with this. This was a conversation that I had again with Sam Tripoli on one of the episode I was on with him. We were talking about the purpose. That's when he actually joined my Bible study for a bit last year, because we were talking about how do you know God? Because he was saying, God's unknowable. Well, we can know him to the extent that we're capable of knowing him, and that will tell us his character. And I said, look, Sam, I know you from listening to your show. I know that you have a soft spot for children, that you would never harm a child. So if someone came to me and said, hey, I saw Sam at this pedophile party, I'm not going to believe it. Why? Not because I was there and could have evidence, but because I know you well enough to know that you would not harm a child. So if someone tells me that Sam is doing something to harm a child, I'm not going to believe it, because I know your character. I don't have to do a bunch of investigation. I don't need to be an expert in every aspect of your life and know all your comings and goings, which I don't. You're a private individual. But same thing with you guys. If somebody told me something about you guys that was completely out of character, I'm not going to believe it. I don't need to be an expert on what they said about you. I need to be an expert on you guys. And I know you guys well enough to know that, if somebody, I've heard some people talk, crap about different people who are I'm not you guys in particular, but like other podcasters I've been on their shows, and they're like, you shouldn't be on that guy or that lady's show. They're this, that, and the other. I'm like, well, I don't see that about them. So that's the whole point of it. If you
let me ask you then, Ed, if we have a guy who, what I know of him is just attacking people constantly on the internet and stirring up drama, and then he's saying things about something that I've known my entire life, which I know is not true, then what do I do about it?
Then that's you distance yourself and say,
exactly. I go, yeah, okay, here are the personalities of something that I know and somebody that I also know to do XYZ thing. There you go. It's fairly simple to me.
If somebody has a podcast, and I'm sure they do have some Satanist podcast, and who are saying things like demiurge, I want to have Ed on my show, I'm not going on your show, because there's nothing beneficial to that. I know that everything you're saying about God is not true, and I think you're only going to have me on your show to benefit you and to try to tear down what I believe. And my audience isn't listening to your show, so I'm not going to go there.
Right.
So
I feel
Yeah,
like
I guess
you
it's
love your kids.
this
And
is
so if someone
probably
says
just
to me that, you know, that Top and Raven are like, you know, beating the crap out of their kids. I'm like, I don't know. I'm going to question that.
I'm definitely beating the shit out of my kid. But
Well, you know.
yeah, I guess it's just par for the
don't
course
hypothetical.
though, right? When you're dealing with something like this, I expect I'm going to run into people who have questions that I just simply don't have the answer for. But I like I said, I don't even think it's really him. It's just
But there are no questions though. You showed me and I was like, yeah, like we've heard this argument before. What's the question?
no.
It's
And then well, we had that discussion, and I explained that they left in such a hurry, like it was literally like ripping this kid away and running. And he said, yeah, but the Greek translation for the cloth that was used on this child's groin was a very particular translation that meant medicated cloth, I believe. And then that opened up some huge thing to like pharmakia and all this other stuff. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, I don't fucking have the IQ right now to deal with this. And so I just left it alone. And it's just kind of been sitting in the back of my mind a little bit. That's all. And
But
I
you also
just
have to know context, because the word can have several different meanings. We just talked about Ma'im. It can mean, depending on the context, it can mean water, it can mean polluted water, it can mean chaos. So you can't just decide that it means one water in this context because it fits your agenda. Look at the context of what is happening here. Again, same thing with Nakash. If your context is, well, you know, the Bible is silly, is a bunch of fairy tales. Oh, it's a talking snake.
right.
But it also has other definitions. It can mean the shining one. What makes more sense? What makes sense in a context? Do snakes talk? We don't have any evidence to snakes talk, but we do have evidence from the Bible that Adam and Eve were part of God's council in Eden. This will be on a future episode. They were part of God's holy council. They interacted with these angelic beings all the time. So they were interacting with another one. That's why Eve didn't freak out. If a snake started talking to me, I'm like, I'm out of here. I'm not talking to you. I'm not having a conversation. But if someone who I had talked to before is talking to me, sure, let's have a conversation. So you have to know the context. So whatever this cloth might mean, I'm sure in Greek it probably has several meanings. But if you know Jesus' character, that he's not going to have intercourse with a child, then you can eliminate that possible meaning if it even comes up, because it doesn't fit the context. I know we're taking a lot. I know Top is like, I don't want to talk about that guy anymore. I totally get it. But I'm speaking generally to the audience. If you are studying with an interlinear Bible and a word has several meanings, make sure that whatever meaning you want to apply fits the context of the word. I mean, I get into that with the little season because it's promoted by preterists. And preterists, their main verse is, Matthew 16:18, where Jesus says, there are some of you standing here today who will not taste death till they see the Son of Man appearing in his kingdom. But that word kingdom is basileia, or basileia, however you want to pronounce it. Basileia means royal authority. Now, it can mean physical kingdom if in the right context. And that would be a legitimate translation of that word if Jesus was talking about his second coming and setting up his kingdom in Matthew 16. But he's not. He's talking about his authority to give rewards to people who live the Christian life. So he says, there are some of you standing here today who will not see death until they see me appearing in my royal authority. If you look at that in context, Jesus says the Christian life will be difficult. He says, if any man will come after me, let him take up his cross and follow me. So Christian life's going to be difficult. He says, but there will be rewards. And when you die, you will stand before me. I'll be at the right hand of my Father, and I have the authority to give you that reward. And there are some of you standing here today who actually see me in that authority. And then 6 days later, some of them standing there that day, just turn the page, see him appear in his royal authority as a Mount of Transfiguration. That's the proper translation in context. But there were several meanings of basileia, but you have to look at the one that's actually in context of what Jesus was talking about, and one that would make no sense. If Jesus said, the Christian life's going to be difficult, I'm going to reward you. Oh, and by the way, when the second coming happens, you're going to be here. Wait, what? That's whiplash. What were you, Jesus? How did we get there? You weren't. It's not what we were talking about. So anyway, that's just another example.
Well, I'm glad that we dedicate as much time as we do to trying to understand these things. And what's clear to me is, just given the context of some people dedicating their entire lives to this, and there's so much here to try to understand. So, I don't necessarily feel bad that I'm still learning. It's just one of those things where it's like, you'd like to be able to dispel some things when people bring them to you if they do genuinely have concerns.
I get it, and I'm sorry for jumping down your throat. It's just that I don't like this guy.
Yeah, I
don't
I know.
If you're ever listening, don't ever come to me and tell me what I can and can't do and what I should and shouldn't do. If you ever do it in my face, I'd punch you.
You get that a lot, dude. You
or
do
worse.
this when we do this show, we get people that just they scream at us on the internet. Why did you platform this person or that person? And at the end of the day, it's because we'll talk to whoever the fuck we want to talk to. And that's
guess what, buddy? Not you. So now, like that's your fault. Now I literally talk to anybody. It's a fault. We talk to too many people. I'm tired. I mean, so it's like all day in the hospital, and then we talk to 2 people from like at 11 o'clock this morning. But not you, because now you've annoyed me. Yeah. So there is a line that I draw, and when I draw that line, it's a hard one.
You don't have to listen to it. I mean, there are lots of podcasts I listen to, and I'll see the guest, and I'll say, I'm not interested in this guest, so I'll just wait for the next episode, and I'll listen to that guest.
Well, that's the thing too, is that people don't listen; they just bitch. That's what you get a lot of. We got a lot of that for the last episode that we did with that guy Donnie Darkened. People said, why'd you do this? Why'd you do that? Why'd you platform him? How dare you? Yada, yada, yada. You're an op. And it's like, if you listen to that episode for more than 13 minutes, you'll realize that it's just full of contention and arguing. It was not like our typical episode. So it doesn't matter really what people think, because at the end of the day, they're actually not even absorbing your work. They're just bitching up at you, and then they won't do their due diligence to see what you actually said.
I would say that's a pet peeve of mine, where I will get a comment on something I did, a video I did, or a podcast, and they'll write something, and I was thinking, you didn't even watch this, did you? Because if you did, I addressed that already. What in detail? Why are you asking me about it? And my response is, go watch the video again, because everything you said, I already spoke about it in vivid detail. So if you're, and they'll say, well, I don't want to watch the video, just answer me. Like, no, if you can't be bothered to watch this video that I did a ton of research on, why should I be bothered to answer your question?
You know what the good news is, though?
Come back to me.
The good news is we reach so many people, especially in our case. It's like there's so many people that enjoy this show, and the people who bitch and moan about one thing or another are the vocal minority. And I mean a real minority, because when you do the math on it, it's like, what do I get? 5 people a week who say something out of pocket that's a little bit agitating. And then when you look at it in the grand scheme of things, that's 0.05%.
It's really,
of the entire
really nobody, but it's always shocking when like after a while, you're like, you wanted daddy's attention. Now you got my attention. I told you to shut up. And they go, oh my God. Like, I can't believe I've been calling you slurs for the last 3 weeks, and now you finally told me to shut up. And I was like, yeah, dude, enough. But it's like, again, with the thing with this debate with Donnie Dark, don't ever tell me who to have on, number 1. Number 2, don't tell me how to address this person. I'm not going to go and use weird, dramatic, underhanded tactics in what I didn't even think would be a debate, thought it would be a discussion. I'm not going to throw somebody under the bus in that manner because you think I should. You don't have a successful show because that's how you deal with things, I guess. I do.
It's like that guy who kept telling me hey, tell the NephilimDeathSquad guys to stop using the word retard. Like, I'm not their dad.
Now I have to use it more. Now I have to say it again. Yeah. That's what you get, honestly, when you come with that sort of shit.
But it turns out that, just letting somebody talk about their views might actually do more harm to them than slandering them, which is not something I'm interested in doing with somebody that I invite on this show. It's not a good thing.
One thing you said that I think is really poignant, Top, is that look at their fruit.
Yeah.
Are they growing? Are they? I mean, and that doesn't mean if you put out bad information, you're not going to grow, because some people want that. But are you making anyone's life better?
I wouldn't want that. Would you want that? Would you want that for whatever? Every time you log in, I just have to go and look for like who's doing this and who. No, that's horrible, man. I can't live my life that way. And it seems like, all right, this is what I want to invite onto my show. Absolutely not. But this has been invited onto my show now for the last 20 minutes. I just feel like we had to talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, I'm sorry for bitching and moaning for the last 20 minutes. Why don't we get to this? What are we getting into next time, Ed?
So next time, actually, what I want to do, if everything works out, is I'd like to talk about my book. My plan is to have it published electronically by next week, and I'd love to talk about it. And it's really about what I'm calling the false apocalypse. And I think it's really poignant at this point because there's so much end times information out there by everyone, and my opinion, and I back it up with my facts in the book, is that the opening of the 6 seals in Revelation chapter 6 is not the beginning of God's judgment. I think it's actually a con, a deception by Satan. And I think if you have that, if you understand that, then that passage is going to make a lot more sense to you. And I think it'll really prepare you for what is really going to be happening in the end time. And it really falls into what we see happening currently on the prophetic timeline. Whereas everyone knows, this new world order that's been talked about for decades, centuries, actually, is finally going to culminate during this period of time. And I talk about how my reason for believing that, and how it's backed up by the Bible, by Jesus's own words, and that in that passage. And I think it's going to cast in a whole new light and help people who have maybe read that passage. If you're into eschatology, you've read Revelation chapter 6 100 times. I think it'll give you some new things to think about. Doesn't mean I'm right, but I think it reimagines it, and it will allow you to ask some more questions and maybe take a deeper dive. So I'm going to talk about that in the next time. And then, after that, we'll probably get into like this, maybe the following week, if we can, if our schedule sync up, we'll talk about the actual 6 days of creation and what's going on in each one of those 6 days.
All right. Well, looking forward to it. And one more time, where can people find your work?
Faithbyreason.net. That is the legacy website. And I am really encouraging people to go to my Patreon. That's the website there. Actually, I've got another video I need to put up there that I'll put out on YouTube this morning. I need to have that on that site. But I'm encouraging people to go to the Patreon, not just because it supports me. I do appreciate the support. I appreciate my Patreons greatly, but that's where I'm doing all my interacting with people. That's where I'm answering questions. And that's where you're going to get the episodes first. They're going to go up there first. You're going to get bonus episodes that will not be on YouTube because I don't want any more strikes against me and getting kicked off of it. And you can ask me questions, and I will answer them in a video every week. And also, if you level up, you'll be part of the Bible study. And we talked a lot in this episode about the way to have discernment is to know the real. The best way to see a counterfeit is to be really familiar with the original. And that's the whole purpose, not just of the Bible study, but of Faith by Reason in general, to help you know who God is, his will for you, his personality, the way he does things, his methodology, so that if you see or hear any theory, or if you have any thoughts in your own mind that are different than that, you can say, you know what, I need to question that. I need to look deeper in that because that doesn't match what I know. So the whole purpose of that Bible study is to help you really understand God through his story, because that's how we get to know people, not by learning facts about them, which is what most people do when they read the Bible. I want to know facts about what the meaning of love or faith, and that's fine. But the purpose of a story is to help you know someone, because if you learn facts about me, where I was born, where I went to school, that doesn't help you know me. But if you know my stories, what I was like as a child, what my family was like, what my values are, what I was like in college, all those things, then you will know me and you'll know who I am and who I'm not. The Bible is God's story. And if you know it well, then you will know him, and you won't fall for anyone who presents him in any way that doesn't match up to the reality of who he is.
Well said. Well said, Ed. All right. Sorry again about this. Has been like a weird week of episodes. Been like people getting me angry.
I gotta watch some of your stuff and see, because you guys, I'm curious now.
Watch the one with Donnie. That was a wild episode. I said, much more contentious than anything that we've done previously.
Also, in my defense, towards the end of it, probably after an hour 10, I was just like, whatever, just talk, dude. I'm not gonna. Yeah, I can't keep getting talked over. Oh, whatever. This is a whole thing. Guys, thanks for coming. Thanks for showing up. This is the 6th episode of the Genesis series, and we'll be back next week. I guess we're done this week, right, Dave?
Are we done this week? I don't know. Am I coming to hang out with you this weekend, or what's going on?
Oh God, I hope not. We'll see.
If I do come to your place, then we have to record an episode. So we might see people, maybe.
I'll let you know it's going to be up because my son is he was in the hospital last night. So I'm going to talk to my wife, and if she thinks that he's good, then we'll continue as planned. If not, I don't know what we're going to do. It's been a weird it's been rough. Well, it's been rough.
Maybe we'll see you tomorrow. Maybe not.
Maybe. All right. Obey, submit, comply. Bye, guys.
The greatest hypnotist on planet Earth is a oblong box in the corner of the room. It is constantly telling us what to believe is real.
You can persuade them that what they see with their eyes is what there is to see. You can't. Because they'll laugh in the face of an explanation that